G'day everyone, just making sure everything's up and running. Got to open up my little drink bottle here. What are we going to be having today? I think it might be a Corona day. Oh, let me check too that that's just closed down. Yeah, I think it's live. So cheers everyone. Happy Thanksgiving for yesterday anyway. all the US folk. I should have put a lemon in this, but oh well. Who's live streaming yams? Photomix just said. Cheers everyone. Nice. Let me just see a bit of what's going on through here. Hey, watch this. Ready? Woohoo! Cheers. Just checking this different live stream setup here. I love it. I've got cameras going all over the place. I mean, you can now see my switchboard. Oh, hang on, I've got to turn it on. Let me switch that camera on. Now it might work. Let me just see. Yes! Here I am. It's all switching and working away. Woohoo! I'm using this new switch, this ATM Mini. I have paid for this myself, by the way, guys, so it's not a freebie. So I did pay it, I think it was $400. I think it's $270 or something US, I think. But it gives you a different perspective, doesn't it? I mean, you can see almost my whole studio through here. So it's a little bit different. Let me know too if you can notice any difference with the audio, because I'm using the Apollo Twin today. I'm using this Apollo Twin here for the audio rather than using my Yamaha AG06. So let me know if you notice any difference in the audio, because I'm just curious to know what's going on. If you didn't watch my ATM Mini, you can now see my setup that I use here. This is just a bit of a pre-show before we get started. Gerald, is that you? I love it. But I mean, it's just saying, Gerald, is that you? Yeah, so I'll show you my whole setup just in case if you want to see it. I've got a Yamaha AG06, which is over here. This is the tour box that I use for Lightroom and Photoshop editing. I have a Wacom tablet that I've got here. This is the ATM Mini deck that I've got here. This is the Apollo Twin that I'm using today for the audio. I thought I'd try it because it's a much more high-ended audio interface. So Langston said he hasn't heard any difference in the audio. I tried it through headphones and it was a little bit cleaner, but it'll be curious to know whether YouTube can pick that up. This is a real high-end audio interface that's used for musicians. It's called the Apollo Twin. So that's what I'm using for my audio interface. You can see the second camera I've got here. That's the one that I'm using to cut to that. And I've got obviously my Mac Pro, which is in the tower, which is here. I've got the Soonwell control here, which is controlling my light. And you can see the Soonwell LED light, which is right above me. And then I've got the Sennheiser mic, which is above me for the audio through here as well. So that's sort of the whole setup that I've got. These are Fostex studio monitors, which I love. I really adore those. And I've got a couple of mounts too. There's a Belkin one, and there's also an Elgato Firewire USB hub, or Firewire hubs that I'm using there to connect to as well. I've got two monitors in this setup. I've got a big LG. I think that's a 30-inch one, I think. So I've got a big LG widescreen monitor here, and this one over this side is my Apple Mac monitor as well. So it gives you an idea about the setup that I'm actually using. So I thought just occasionally I can switch over. But cheers. Hey, you know what? With the new rules that YouTube are coming out with, because you've now got to stipulate whether you're an adult channel or a child channel, and if you don't stipulate it, you can get in trouble. It might be good to actually drink. Either that or you start swearing or something like that on the thing, so they definitely cannot say that I'm a child channel. But anyway, it's quite funny. Let's see who's in the chat anyway. Let's have a look. Let's see over here. I wasn't going to actually come on today because I looked and it was such a quiet news day. Normally my day is yesterday that I pop on, but yesterday being Thanksgiving in the US, I thought, well, I won't because everyone will be having dinner and everything else. So I thought I'll change that and just do it at the normal time, 9 o'clock this morning. But then I looked through the news and there was so little there, but in the end I thought, well, why not? I'll just pop on and have a chat with you guys anyway. So there is a little bit of news, but not heaps. I think it's getting closer to Christmas, and with Black Friday sales and everything else that's on, and Thanksgiving, it's been a bit quiet on the news front. But we've got a few things we can talk about together. So this isn't my normal time, but I thought I'd pop on now. It's, what is it? It's 1:39 p.m. Melbourne time here at the moment. So Langston is getting this. So Langston's going to get this. I've got to go back to there. Langston is going to get this little mixer. He's saying there that it's coming on the December the 5th. You're going to love it, Langston. This thing is awesome. You can push the sound through it, but the only thing is it hasn't got 48 volt, and I need 48 volt to run this Sennheiser that I'm looking at over here, because this Sennheiser is a 48 volt microphone. You can run it from battery, but I'm running it on 48 volt. Then I never need to worry about batteries. But because of that, this ATM Mini does not have, it doesn't have a 48 volt ability in it, and you can't directly connect the XLR microphone, so I'd have to get an adapter to plug in. So, but you can control the full audio on this as well, and it also switches. Like, you can do things like cuts, auto, like your transitions can be done through it. So you'll see when I switch how it gives you that nice transition. That can all be changed through this box. It's brilliant. If you're a YouTuber, it's fantastic. Like I said, I have bought it myself, so if you're interested to see the full review of it, check a couple of videos back, because I did a full review. Let me just go back to the chat. So excited for you, Langston. You're going to love it. Yeah, so much for a November release. Well, I got mine pretty well much when they said it was going to be coming. So Phonomix says, no matter what time it is, you'll always be a loser, Casper. Blatantly trying to live stream yams. Casper said, gee whiz Ike, happy Thanksgiving to you. What else have we got? Anything else on there? A bit cold here in LA, having an actual coffee. It's probably going to be cold when I come out. I'm probably going to freeze when I come out in February, aren't I? Because I'm coming from our summer to your winter, so it's probably going to be really cold. Because I've usually come out in your summer when it's winter here, so it's going to be interesting this time to be popping over in your winter. Hopefully it's not too cold. G'day, Gerald. How you going? John, g'day John. Alex, Corona, you're back. Yep, Corona's here. Should be a lime, not a lemon, but either way, good mate. Yeah, I've got a lime tree growing. I've got a lemon tree at the moment. That's why I always use lemons, but I have got a lime tree, and I've got the first limes on there this year, so I'll be able to have my own lime shortly. I love Photomix saying, Gerald, is that you? I love it. Lunchtime beer. Exactly, Colin. Jared said, nice, I like the setup. Langston said, no difference in audio to me. The glare is real bad, though. You're talking about off my head. Oh, I love it. How sexy do I look on this view, though, even though you can see my bald head? I mean, come on, seriously. Bill said, hi, you sound good. Thanks, Bill. Barry said, just got your chat audio good. Where are we to? Where was I? Oh, there we go. Langston said, I don't normally wear headphones, so maybe that's why I didn't notice a difference. John said, just tuned in. What did I miss? Nothing, John, because we've only just started, so you haven't missed anything. Jared said, audio good coming from the iPad Pro. We'll stop hitting people with... Oh, they're arguing between each other again. Live equals no sleeping today. How did the keyboard die? Death by spill. Oh, you're talking to someone else, are you? What else have we got? I spilled Coke on it last night. Oh, Photomiac, you wrecked your keyboard. Oh, no. Any Black Friday purchases, Alexander? No, I haven't. Apart from... the only thing I bought the last couple of days is 2 batteries for the Insta360X that I've been sent. Because I want to do a review of that. That's the only thing that I've bought over the last few days. I'm trying to save up a little bit for my big trip to the US in Feb, so I don't want to spend too much money. Especially with the dollar exchange, it sucks. I think I only get about 67 cents per dollar. So, boy, it's an expensive trip. Ryan said, hello, just got the notification. That's not really my issue. The issue is having some keys not having you talking about your keyboard. Ryan said, my Apple keyboard stopped working after a few drops of coffee. Your coffee does not go well. Dave says, have you ever looked into the Zcam S6? No, I haven't, actually. The desert trips could be a bit chilly around that time. Vegas, Arizona, yeah, they probably will be, Langster, but at least we're not going to get hot walking around, I suppose. So that's one of the things. I don't really mind if it's a bit cool. It'll be something interesting anyway. Gerald said 60 Fahrenheit in the days in LA and Vegas, but lower at night in the desert in February. I'm still looking forward to coming, even though it is going to be colder over there. Cold in Los Angeles, but still a Corona day. Exactly. Woo-hoo. So what have you all bought with Black Friday, guys? I'd love to know if you've bought much. Have you bought anything exciting? Like I said, I haven't bought anything at all apart from 2 batteries. Like I said, I'm trying to save for my trip to LA and San Francisco and Vegas in Feb. For those that do follow me, love you to meet up with me while we're out there. We're out for 4 weeks, Kerry and myself. We are going to have a week in Santa Monica, where we're going to organise a couple of shoots there. We've also got a shoot that Michael has said we can use in a restaurant there in LA that he said is an amazing place to shoot if you're a photographer. So we're going to have a meet-up to do that, which is going to be really exciting. A couple of meetups there. We're going to shoot around Santa Monica on the beach as well, so that's all going to be exciting. And then we're going to go to Vegas for WPPI, but then we're also going to have meetups there. But please join us. If you do want to join us through a trek through the desert, you're welcome to follow along and we can have a bit of a road caravan going on. That's going to be really a lot of fun as well. And then after that, we go back, I think we're going up to Yosemite and San Francisco. So, yeah, I'd love to see you all. Meet up, have a bit of a coffee with everyone. And a bit of shooting as well. I will bring a little bit of gear. I'll probably bring my Profoto B10 and I'll probably the A9 and the a7 III. I think Kerry will probably shoot with the a7 III and a couple of lenses. So I am going to bring a little bit of gear out, which should be exciting. So I'd love to have a meet up with you all. But stay tuned. If you want to ask anything, you can message Gerald, who's in this group as well. Gerald's organising, so is Langston. And I think you could also add comments into our photography, videography school on Facebook as well, if you want to sort of message us through there as well. Just seeing if anyone's bought anything interesting over the last couple of days. What's that S2C3? What's that mean? Like, Gerald said, I'd made that before. Well, at least a Black Friday for Phonomiac. What else are we? Langston said, nothing. I spent all my money earlier this year. Yeah, same for me. Langston said, but it's not like I could have waited. Broham can't film sketches with a modelling light from the AD600. I'm not sure what that is about. Looking to pick up a Wembley gimbal. No Black Friday deals found on it. I've just been contacted too about Firetech 2. There's a new AK2000 gimbal that's going to come out, and they're going to send me the new one. I think it's the AK2000S, so I'm looking forward to reviewing that because I love the other one. So I'm excited about having a look at that. Hunt said the a7 III made the a7S III obsolete. It sort of did, yes. Unless you're dealing with incredible low light type footage, the a7 III is just good enough. In most lighting scenarios, I mean, it focuses better and things like that. So yes, I think it did really hurt the a7S III. So until the a7S IV or whatever comes out, we're going to talk about that in one of the news stories today. I bought the DJI VR headset for my drone. Oh, that's great, Stephen. I've never used one of those, but I've always wanted to try one. Do you get a bit sick using it though, Stephen? Does it make you a bit nauseous? I'd just be curious to know. MZM Photography said, bought the a7riv for 2.4. Wow. Even though, in my opinion, you're a video guy. It's amazing to think. I'm wondering why it's so unusual to have those cameras on special so early. Perhaps they're just not selling as much as what Sony would have liked. Because normally you don't get sales on those so early. Like, it's usually 12 months before you start to get sales. Like, we're only really seeing a7 III sales now, which is interesting. Just what's that saying there? Barry said, I bought a roll of Eltachrome film for black and white. Wow. I just bought the a7R4, but I'm having issues with it. It keeps switching from viewfinder to LCD screen in harsh sunlight for no apparent reason, even when I'm just holding it. Yeah, that's a bit weird. I haven't got any camera I can show you. Just check that EVF, you know, the little cover that covers the EVF, is sitting properly. That could be the case that it's not. It might be better to take it off and then put it back on again, because that can have some issues with the EVF switching sort of intermittently. If it still does it and it's seated correct, you may have to send it back and get them to have a look at it. Casper said, did Angry Junior jump ship again? Yep, Aaron's gone to Panasonic. So he is getting rid of his Sony gear, I believe, and he's jumping over to Panasonic. But you know what? Good on him. A camera choice is a personal thing. And I know for talking to Aaron over a long time that he did always have this love for the Panasonic G9. So yeah, I don't blame him. I mean, look, it's whatever you really want to use is your choice. So yeah, good on him. Gerald said Las Vegas in February 66 to 33. Los Angeles in February 69 to 51. Monument Valley 48-29. Oh, it's going to be a bit cool. I have to bring some jackets. Langston says he would disagree about the a7 III making the a7S III obsolete. There are many video-centric features, better bitrate anyone that are missing from the a7 III. Hero said no Black Friday for me, going to Aruba tomorrow. Waiting for the Sky Duo 2 drone. Interesting. Bill said, I've ordered the new Canon EOS RA for astrophotography. It is more sensitive to the HO light of the red nebulas. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that is, Bill. It sounds interesting if you want to shoot astrophotography. Stephen said, motion sickness for my mother-in-law, but I was spinning her. Oh, no, I'll be terrible. Gerald said, Grand Canyon in February is 46. Well, at least we're not going to get hot walking around, are we, Gerald? And I suppose, like anything, often if it's cool, you get more beautiful photos because you don't have that sort of reflection in the atmosphere. I can't remember what you call it, but there is that haze that you get in the atmosphere that looks. It gets rid of that when you're dealing with shooting in the deserts in winter. Delta Dave said Zeiss Optus 100 1.4. Wow, well done, Dave. Beautiful lens. I did pick up a second a7 III body, but was down to 1669. That's amazing, isn't it? What a freak show, Casper said. Just behave, Casper. Go with the camera. Some folks need to find their way with cameras. Let them bang. I'm not sure what that means. Breaking news, Sony Alpha Rumors, SR5, new A7 1V coming in 2020. Let me have a look. File, new window. Well, I wouldn't think it's that really breaking at the moment because I expect that to be the case. I can't see it on there, though. It's not. I'm just checking Sony Alpha Rumors. I'm not seeing that, but I am going to talk about some of these things in a second anyway. Is there any others? Nope, don't see it. Oh, well, must be it. Perhaps it's Australia. How do you see Canon's mirrorless cameras shaping up over the next couple of years? Seems like they have the best, sharpest lenses based on all reviews I'm seeing. Would love a 1DX equivalent. Caleb, yeah, I think all Canon really need to do, and I've noticed a lot of people switching lately. I'm not sure whether there's been some people paid or what's going on, but there is a lot of people that are switching lately back to Canon. I certainly would not do that myself, but if Canon brought out a EOS R with dual card slots and stop crippling it so much, it might be that I just buy one for the sake of having one. I would still love some things that the Canon offers. Color science doesn't bother me at all because I think that's irrelevant and I'm quite happy with everything I've got. But I would love a flip-out screen that the EOS R has, and also the touch interface and everything else about that. When I used the EOS R when I was at Jurvan's workshop recently, I did love the way that camera worked. So if they brought out a high-end model, it might be that I'd be tempted to get one, particularly if Sony don't have something with 4K 60 out by that time, and Canon may do one if they release a high-end one. We're just waiting to see. Lens-wise, yes, I think their lenses are second to none. They are unbelievable. Their lenses are incredible. Very, very modern designs, very sharp, great design. I love that little wheel or whatever it is, the ring that you can change to do different things that you want to do. It seems that they really have got a fantastic system. They've just got to stop with that cripple hammer, you know, the Camera Conspiracy's hammer that they keep hitting it with. If they did that, it would be interesting. Like the 1DX, if it is like the previews have said, is going to be an amazing camera, and if they could bring out a mirrorless version of that, it would be fantastic. I'm not ever going to jump away from Sony. I mean, look, I'm too old and everything. I'm too invested in Sony now to do that. But it might be that I buy one camera to have a look at. And I think if I was going to buy any camera at the moment, it probably would be a Canon due to that market's so big. And it obviously would help the channel as well. I'd have other things that I could probably post. But it depends. At the moment, I wouldn't buy one because there's no way I'm going to buy a camera with a single card slot. That's for sure. What else have we got? PhotoMeX said, how long will Aaron keep his Panasonic G9? Well, at least a couple of weeks. I love it. Will he go to Sony again? Was he full of crap when he claimed he wanted full frame? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z mount. Oh, that's nasty, PhotoMeX. Aaron has always had a love for the Panasonic G9 though. Look, check out his video that he's just talked about it. He put a video up yesterday, I think, and it explains the whole reason why he went back. And he was looking inside some images and things like that, and he was saying that he couldn't tell the difference. And I have to back him up in one way because I have got some shots that I took with the GH5, and they are beautiful that I took with depth of field. It was gorgeous, bokeh in the background. It depends on the lenses that you use. You certainly can use micro four thirds for that. But where it struggled, and see, Aaron may not have an issue with that, but for me, where it really struggled was when I started to delve with low light. It was just nowhere near like what I wanted to use if I was, say, shooting receptions or a bride in the evening and things like that. The noise was just too bad on it. And plus, now there's two things of looking at it this way too. The autofocus of the G9 is probably up there with the A9. It is unbelievable. It is so fast. It's incredible in most ways. It is sort of like a mini A9 if you're dealing with stills work. The problem is when you go to video, that's where it starts to have issues because you get that bit where it focuses past and comes in. The sort of contrast detection that it uses is not good at all. And so that's where you get that focus where it'll rack past, rack back, and then it locks on, and it looks terrible for video. So video-wise, it's not very good, but Aaron obviously is not worried about that. He does manual focusing and everything else. So there was a new firmware released for that the other day. That may have addressed a lot of those issues that were there with the Panasonic G9. But if you are dealing with photography, I have to say that even my G9 was unbelievable. It's still focused, I think, in worse low light than what any of my Sony cameras were. It can almost focus in the pitch blackness. It's that good. It was when you went to video that it became an issue, but very, very fast, super fast for stills. It does things like 20 frames per second and all these other things. So he seems happy with it. But like I said, gear is really for yourself to decide. Only you know what you would like to use. And he's obviously very happy with that. So I tell you, g'day, mate. I've got a new Peak Design 3 litre. Cool. I've got a few Peak Design bags. Hanging out for Sony to add 4K 60. You're not on your own there, Colin. No firmware can give a second card slot. Yep, exactly, Gerald. So that's why I'm not going to be buying a Canon at this stage. No one cares about a second card slot, apparently. I certainly do, especially since I had another card fail recently. Aaron in Puerto Rico has great light more often than many other places. True, Gerald. Yep, and I suppose we're the same here in Australia as well. Here in Australia, we do have, we have a hell of a lot of sunny days. So, you know, I could probably do that. But it's low light in the evening that became an issue for me. Daylight and everything like that is not a problem here in Australia. It's more in the evening when, you know, like I said, you were shooting low light reception work and things like that, where it became a bit of an issue. All right, that's it. All right, so let's go through some of the news stories, guys, because I want to take you through some of this stuff. So let me just switch. I'm going to switch cameras again. Let me just do this just so I can do it because I'm so excited. I'm like a kid with a candy shop. Cheers. Oh, cheers. That up there, by the way, is... What is that one? That's my A7... That's the a7 III up there. And I've got the 16 to 35 f4 on it. So that's what I'm using for this wide angle. So it's a 16 to 35 f4. The one that I'm using up here is my Tamron 28 to 75 on the A9. So that's what's being used on that camera at the moment. I might switch that camera off actually because that's on battery. The one I'm using up there on the wide angle is that's using that Zoomwell battery pack. So that'll run for a few hours. Let me just switch that off. All right, anyway, so let's go through some news stories. So first story today. This is quite... Oh, no, actually, I want to go for this first. I wanted to take you through this because this Sony Alpha Rumors has shared this rumor for the A7S IV. They're saying that we may get an A7S IV and skip the A7S S3, which is interesting. So Sony confirmed multiple times that they will release a new A7S successor and that it will exceed expectations. The only info I got from a summer source is that the A7S III has a cooling vent and records 4K 120. So what they're saying here is that it's going to record 4K 120. And there's a number of sources, I'm not going to read them all out, but there's 4 sources here that are talking about different things. We've got one source saying that it'll be shoot 5.9K with 4K 20 and a 36 megapixel dual backlit global sensor. Source 2 said, this is this one here. Let me just scroll down a bit. Source 2 said Sony camera to support 8-bit XOCN codec with 10-bit option. Now, I'm not sure what that means. They're saying when a grip is attached, which would be a little bit disappointing if that's the case. I hope Sony don't go down this avenue of forcing you to put a grip on. I know the Fuji forced people to do that from one of their cameras. I think it was the XT2 or XT3. I can't remember. The pressure from Panasonic full frame. They're saying there's pressure from Panasonic, the full frame, the S1, SH1, as it subsamples 4K 444 from an 8K sensor. So they are saying there is pressure from Panasonic, full frame. Source 3 said, wanted to note that the 36 megapixel sensor mentioned is for an upcoming 8K video-centric camera that should hopefully debut next year. But they're saying in here that the interesting thing is here that it's technically the sensor is capable of high read speeds. However, I've heard heat and energy drain over the read speeds needed for video use are a major hang-up. And that's probably what's going to be the issue with these cameras, is the heat is going to be a massive issue in the current Sony bodies. So Sony are going to have to come around with some form of a workaround for getting the heat out of that camera. Like I said, it might be like the SH1, which does use that fan and heat sink, etc. I think it's probably the thing holding it up is that they're going to have to think about changing the camera body, I think, if they want to get a decent output, particularly if you're talking about bigger bit depths and 4K 120, for instance. So that's interesting. They're saying either way, I've heard things about large fans and large heat sinks. That's here. All trying to be squeezed as small and quiet as possible. And Source 4 said, saying English is not my language, but he said he's talked to a Sony ambassador, whether they would know. I mean, I don't know if they're told anything anyway, but they're saying A7S III won't be revolutionary, but more something like a mini FX9 without high quality Kodak. So in other words, they're going to hit it with a cripple hammer, and this is what worries me more than anything. If they do hit it with like this Canon cripple hammer, they're saying the weight. They wanted to wait for the FX9 because the sensor could be inside the A7S III. The marketing problem with high quality Kodak in the mirrorless lines. In other words, what they're saying in here is that I think they wanted to protect the FX line, which is a bit of a bummer if that's the case. So don't expect, and this is what worries me, is this what they've said here. So don't expect to see an SH1 competitor. Sony marketing is against internal 422 in this mirrorless camera line. 422 in 4K at least is for the FX line, and that would be a real disappointment if that's the case. So I'm hoping that that's not real, but you know, it's a bit of a worry. And look, the thing that I get worried about is the longer we wait, like they've kept saying that it's going to be above people's expectations. Well, the longer they wait, it's going to get harder and harder for Sony to do that. Particularly as you're getting cameras released like the Panasonic SH1 and other cameras now that are already doing 4K 60 and, you know, giving us major bit depths, you know, 400 megabits per second and all this sort of stuff. So it's just interesting. It's going to be interesting to see which way they go. I think there's a couple of things that are going to happen here that if they're going to release this camera that does, I mean, we can't even get one from Sony at the moment that does 4K 60. So if they're going to give us a camera that does 4K 120, I think there's clearly going to have to be a major decision made on the body. And I just hope they're not going to protect their high-end line because, you know, as a videographer myself now, I definitely would like a camera that gives me the options to have more bit depth. Particularly as I'd like to eventually say look at doing green screen and all these sort of things as well. So I know photographers aren't interested in that, but videographers are. Remember, there's more and more videographers now coming into the marketplace, particularly with fusion with these cameras as well. But you know, it's interesting to see what's going to happen. So let me just check what people are saying in the chat. Photomix says, I don't know what hype Canon is putting out. I just know I see a whole lot of people with Canon in the thumbnail. Oh no, there is, like, I'm not sure if people have been paid off or what, because there seems to be an awful lot of people that have switched over to Canon lately. And it's just interesting, because the funny thing is, I just can't believe, as a professional photographer particularly, that you would go to I know you use it, Photomech, with the Z7, but I can't believe you would switch over from using something like Sony and go to, say, Canon that has a one-card slot camera when you're dealing with paid work. And I just don't know. I certainly wouldn't do it, but it's interesting how so many people have switched lately. I've seen that a lot lately, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm just seeing what else people are saying up here. Scott said that new firmware Canon came out, fixed a lot of the problems, but no second card slot. Yeah, and it did, Scott. I agree with you. It's certainly, Canon's IAF now is becoming more and more usable. It's so close to what Sony have got now that I think probably the next generation of cameras that are going to come out, we're probably going to have all the same thing. So, you know, I think that side of things has gone now. We can't any longer say that Sony is by far the best in autofocus if you're dealing with IAF and things like that now, because when I used that the Canon ESR the other day, I thought it was equally as good as anything that I've got. It's probably not as fast as the A9, but it's, you know, it's certainly incredible to use now compared to what it used to be. And I know even the Z series cameras from Nikon have improved drastically as well. Guy with the camera said, Panasonic guaranteed to run into AF issues in video. Yeah. That's the problem. So you still, but remember, a lot of videographers are still shooting and focusing manually. So if you're doing that, having a Panasonic camera is not an issue. Fodemir said, gear is such a personal choice. Goes and makes a YouTube video telling the world about your gear choices. The irony. I love it. Carl said, cool vantage point. The coffee has an odd colour today. It does, Scott. I know. Gordon says, is anyone surprised that Thomas Heaton picked the Fuji X-T3 over the Sony camera to replace complement of his Canon 5D? I don't even know who Thomas Heaton is, Gordon. So someone else might be able to chime in. Thomas is having an Aaron moment. Oh, poor Aaron. Juicy says, hi, David. G'day, Juicy. Langston says, nah, I'm done with rumours. I know, it's so frustrating because I was talking about a7S3, I think, at the start of last year, and it still hasn't happened. Carl said, this silence, the haters, laugh out loud. I'm not sure what that was. Canon Hero says, everybody switching to Canon, even the everything man. Yeah, I really like him, though. He's a great bloke, so I'm sure he's not being paid to switch over. I wouldn't think he would have enough users. He's like me. He just wouldn't have enough subscribers for Canon to pay someone to switch over anyway. So he probably just... The thing was, he had... I'm pretty sure he had an a7 III, didn't he? And then he sold and got an a6000, I think. a6400 or something like that. And then he's gone to a Canon EOS R. So he's probably just made a decision that he'd like to move over. I certainly wasn't accusing him of being paid off. He's a great bloke. Billboard photographers will love the 500 megapixels. Langston, I guess Kando trips don't pay enough. Everyone waiting for 4K 60. Sony comes out with 4K 120. I know, I'd just be happy with 4K 60. Gerald says, Phony Miak, look at the chipper sales data for the Canon EOS R and the RP. Oops, where were we? Down here. 4K 60 doesn't appeal to me. 4K 20, I'm on board. Guy with the camera. Interesting. Woody said, hello, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Can you two, please, guys, I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up too. We've got 123 watching and only 21 thumbs up. It does make more people come to the channel. And remember, I'm unsponsored, so I would appreciate if you could give me a thumbs up. I know I ask every week, but I would appreciate it. Chris said, Sony needs to stop being afraid of having a big booty. Sony, look, I think that camera manufacturers that do hold back are very short-sighted, and that's the thing. And I've mentioned this before, that please, Sony, if you do watch this, don't hold back on an a7S III because you're trying to protect your high-end line. People will still buy that high-end gear because guess what? They want XLR inputs. They want to have phantom power built into those cameras. They want to have the ability to put hard drives onto those cameras. They want the ability to add modules and things like that onto those cameras, monitors and everything else. People are not going to be in a professional marketplace and just change to Sony full-frame cameras. I'm telling you that if you're in a high-end market, you are still going to be using an FS5 or the FX9. That's for sure. So Sony are very short-sighted. What you've got to understand too is that they would buy an FX9 and then they would use, say, an a7S III as a B camera to that system, and that's what Sony have to understand. It's a very short-sighted system to hold back. It's always what Canon have done, and it's stupid. I think you'd be nuts to do that. People are still going to buy the high-end gear that need it. Don't forget too that if you are doing high-end video work, there's an expectation there too that you're going to come with professional gear. If you show up on a very high-end job and you've got a Sony a7S III or something like that, I guarantee on real high-paying jobs, they're going to look at you like you're some weirdo and you're not professional. If you're doing real high-end work, you need to be using an FS5 or something like that. Just like a Canon, you'd be using a C200 or something around that line as well. So I don't think that there's any issue with having both models, and they shouldn't be holding back. The one thing I loved about Sony was that they didn't hold back, and the longer we're going, they seem to be holding more and more back, which is a bit frustrating. What else have we got over here? I'm going Panasonic or Blackmagic. Yeah, well, I sort of don't blame you because nothing's happening, Langston, so I don't blame you doing that because you're particularly from video side of things, so I can completely understand it. We don't need 120 more than we need better bit depth. Yep. Guy with the camera. Panasonic is having huge price cuts. Think they aren't going so well. I'm going to talk about that. They're selling their sensor business as well, so I'm going to discuss that shortly. We'll need a lens selection to entice me. Carefully watching firmware. Where were we? If Canon puts out a 4K 60 camera with 2 CFast slots, it's a wrap for Sony. Well, I don't think it'll be a wrap for Sony, Hero, but it's definitely competition. Remember, we do want competition, don't we? I mean, we really do want competition. The worst thing as a Sony user could be if other camera manufacturers went broke. Because I guarantee it, if Nikon didn't exist, if Canon didn't exist, if Panasonic didn't exist, we'd still be using an A7 II. I mean, why would they worry about upgrading? They keep the price ridiculously high and there'd be no innovation. So we definitely need innovation. Photomix says, I don't care about Canon sales as much as you do, Gerald. It probably doesn't track all with new YouTubers who've switched last week or this coming weekend. Either way, the momentum is shifting. And I agree with you, Ike. I think the momentum is shifting as well. Like I said, it'd be interesting to see what's going on, whether it is a paid thing that Canon are doing. Because, like I said, I've seen a hell of a lot of people switching over to the EOS R, and I've seen a lot over the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks, more than I have over the last couple of years. And it's interesting to see how people tend to be now switching over. Now, it's either because people are sort of more interested in that video side of things and you know, the Canon color, things like that. And like I said, it's only a matter of time before Canon release a higher-ended model. Or they want the lenses that Canon have, which are just brilliant, expensive, yes, but they're brilliant. So there does, I agree with you, there does seem to be a shift that's going on. And I'm not sure why that's happening, and I'd be curious to know if you're not in the live chat today. I'd love to know, put down below too in the chat if you've noticed that as well that's going on. Like I said, it could be a paid thing. I'm not sure. It could be a concerted effort for Canon to get influencers and say, look, we'd love you to switch over, things like that. So it's interesting. I mean, Sony did it with a number of people as well, didn't we? I mean, you've seen over the last 12 months, the people that have switched over to Sony. I mean, I'm sure Irene got money for changing over to Sony, or if she didn't, she probably got free gear and things like that. Whether the same thing's happening with Canon now, again, the problem is that Canon has more money than anyone if you're dealing in the camera industry. I mean, if you look at the whole industry all up, Canon has the market tied up. I mean, they do it. If you're looking at everything in the market, like your lenses, all cameras sort of pushed together, they're a giant compared to probably everyone else. So if they do something that's really good, Sony really have to pull their finger out to keep people from switching over or people to stop going into Canon. The thing is, if you mention a camera manufacturer anywhere, Canon has a bigger name than anyone, and it still has. It still has the #1 name. It will sell because it's Canon, and that's one thing you do have to understand, and that's the thing with Canon. So, they are still a bit of a sleeping giant. If they pull out a really good camera, we could really have an interesting time ahead of us, and that's really one interesting thing. And I'm sure Sony is probably a little bit worried about that deep down. But I'd love to know your opinion about that. But I agree with Photomedic a little bit there that there does seem to be a shift that's going on at the moment. 000, I'm not saying Sony's going to go away. They're not. I mean, they're certainly not going to go away. Sony are incredibly lucky that they have an amazing sensor business as well. And Panasonic are in trouble with that, and I'll talk about that shortly in another news story as well. So Sony's not going anywhere, but they're certainly going to have some competition, and they may not have it all to themselves like they did up until, recently. So it's going to be an interesting time, but it's an exciting time. GH5 got an autofocus update, apparently fixes its one famous gripe. Yeah, I'd have to sort of test that 000 and see actually how it is. Alexander said, I ended up going Blackmagic 6K. Nice camera. In the end, because I was tired of waiting for the a7S III. Now that the Kodak will be poorer in the a7S, I'm happy with that decision. Why do they cripple? I've got no idea, and I think it's very short-sighted. It really is. That's if it happens. It might be rumours. They may come out with an a7 III version of the a7S III that blows everyone out of the water, and that could be amazing. So we're only talking about rumours at this stage. Creative Film said, enjoying my 4K 60 on my new Canon C200. Yep, don't blame you. Fantastic camera. Thomas said, Thomas Heaton is a YouTube landscape photographer in the UK. Oh, okay. Gerald said, Canon is getting influencers and some pros to spread the movement. Jared Poland tested the Canon IAF versus the Sony, and the Sony did much better at further distance. Close is similar. Photomix said, I still use a Panasonic G85 for my YouTube videos. Flippy screen, 4K 30. Yep. Casper said, it's all about the clicks on your YouTube channel. Exactly, Casper. MZM Photography said, was tired of waiting for the a7S III, so I looked into the Zcam S6 and glad I ordered. Imagine the highlight of your week being getting the dislike in an Oastler video. Imagine the highlight of the week being getting that dislike. Oh, in the Oastler video. Hey, don't blame them. Sony got my lot of clicks on my channel in 2017, 2018. That is why I like Sony. Sometimes it's for clicks. Whoops. Where are we? Photomix said, Nikon is the only one not playing the influencer game, sadly enough. Yeah, I wonder why. Because you would think it may be the sensible thing to do. I mean, does it influence people particularly? I'm not sure, but it's certainly an interesting thing to do. The other thing too is you've got to have a little bit of credibility as well. I mean, there's no way, I can tell you, if Canon contacted me tomorrow and said, David, we want you to switch over. There's no way on earth I would be paid to do, and I'm telling you, you might not believe me, but I'm telling you that is the truth. I would not, for any money that they offered me, switch over because I think it's ethically wrong. If you switch for a reason like I did when I went from Nikon to Sony, at the time I wanted to get into Fusion, and that was the reason why I switched over. But I certainly would not switch for money. And I think if that's what's happening and people are saying they're switching and all this sort of stuff because it's better and stuff, it's not ethical. And, I don't know. I just don't like that side of the influencers where they'll switch to whatever pays them more money. I think it's bad. Juicy said, how is your GM? I love it. Best lens, one of the best lenses that I've ever owned. Oh, thank you. I just got a donation. Long Rider gave me $5. Thank you so much, Long Rider. Really appreciate that. I adore this lens. It really is unbelievable. I'm going to do a review of this shortly too because I've used it now in a few weddings and stuff. So, how's a CPU usage? 56. I've used this now in a few weddings and stuff like that and portrait shoots, so I must do another review of it. I love it. Fantastic. Favourite lenses are the 24GM, the 135GM, and my Tamron 28-75. They're probably my favourite, and then inside that too, I love the Batis 85 as well. Let me just see down here. Keep going on. I want to answer as many questions as possible. I do use my GM. I love it. I love that 24. I saw a picture that everyone took at the Sony camera camp. Literally everyone in the picture was a YouTuber with over 50k subs. Yeah. And like I said, sometimes that really annoys me. I mean, it really does annoy me sometimes. And I'm not just saying because I've got 25,000 and I don't get the invites. I think I probably don't fit the Sony mantra anyway, because exactly like I've just said to you, I'll always tell the truth. And as you all know, I'm a Sony user and I love Sony, but when Sony do the wrong thing, I will say that Sony have done the wrong thing. So I'm probably not a good fit for Sony or anyone in that regard, because I'm always going to tell the truth. I've had jobs in my life where I have had to make a line. I could tell you some horrible things where I was in charge of around 40, 50 people, staff, and they wanted me to sack people that have been there for a long time. I don't want to go into the whole dealing with this because they were getting older and stuff like that, and I refused to do it, and I quit the job even though I was earning amazing money and everything else at that time. No matter what people think about me, I will not sell out. Now, I review a lot of stuff, but anything that I review I'm interested in. And if there was a problem with it, I'm lucky really at this stage I haven't really had anything that has been an issue. But if I did have a problem with it, I would say. And, you know, I don't know how some people ethically can deal with it when you're dealing with telling people to buy this gear and it's not really what you're thinking or what you'd like to use, and you're just doing it to sell out. I think it's really bad. And I sometimes I cringe, and like I said, this is why I'm not a perfect fit for Sony. Sometimes I cringe because when I see people that are just saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, and I know for certain that there's something better out there, and they're only saying it because they're basically being paid by Sony, or being paid by Canon, or being paid by Nikon, or whoever. I think it's ethically wrong. If you're being paid, you should just say, look, I'm being paid to do this. And then you basically are a staff employee of that company, and then it's basically expected. You become a salesman for that company. It's like being a used car salesman. I don't ever want to go down that line, and that's why sometimes I upset people when I talk about Sony, because I tell what I believe is the truth. And, you know, I'm always going to be the same. And I think sometimes the way people sell out is not good. Not good at all. And you're right there, Photomaniac. It is. It's if you've got a YouTube or you've paid. I mean, some people will pay for YouTube likes. I mean, they're probably over 50,000 with paid subscribers. You know, and everyone that I've got in my channel is a person that watches my channel and interacts with us and everything else. So. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you can have 50,000 subscribers and you might be just a terrible photography, you know? I mean, you might be crap. But because you've got the subs, you'll be in there in these camps. And I think it's just ethically wrong. They should be dealing with people like me or you, Ike, that will... I know you've got a lot of subscribers, Ike, but they should be dealing with people like us that are actually working professionals. I mean, I get some money from YouTube, but it's not a lot. But I mean, most of my money, nearly 90%, 95% of it comes from me being a working photographer. These people that are full-time YouTubers don't have a working photography studio. They're not working photographers. And that's the interesting thing about that, you know, a lot of it at the moment, if you're an influencer, that as long as you've got the subs, people don't care. But eventually people are going to wake up to that. And they're going to say, look, I'm not going to listen to these people, and I'm going to believe people that are actually using that gear for paid shoots. They're using it to earn money and everything else, instead of just being a shill for whoever it is, you know. Anyway, that's enough of a rant. Three Tree says Canon already has 4K 60 in the... Yes, they have, but I believe there's a massive crop involved, though. But it has still got it, yes. Casper says, unfortunately, cameras are toast. They don't switch over, they are switching back. It might be a combination of improved autofocus and new lenses coming out. The fact that Canon bodies are so cheap doesn't hurt either. Yeah, but their lenses are really expensive. That's the interesting thing about it. And this is why I think there's going to have to be a new body from Canon soon. Because it doesn't make sense at the moment. The price you're paying for the lenses does not make... I'm talking about the R series lenses. The prices you're paying for those lenses does not make sense when you look at the bodies that are there. If they bring out a good body, boy, will that be a killer system. Three Tree said, David, what are you filming yourself with today? I'm filming myself with the a6 400. and the Sigma 16mm. I must do a review on that too, actually. Juicy said, hi Woody, same here with the 24GM, nothing on sales today, most stuff on sales are old stock. Yeah, you very rarely, the interesting thing is you very rarely get really good lenses like the GM lenses and stuff like that that are on sale, particularly something like the GM24, the 135, all those sort of lenses you won't see on sale. They hold their value incredibly well, and Sony make their money on those lenses, so you're not going to see them for cheaper. That's for sure. Doug said, do you think the new Tamron Prime lenses are strange grouping? Well, probably not, Doug, because but I did hear that the Tamron lenses, I haven't used those lenses yet, but someone mentioned to me the other day that it was quite noisy in video, and that's interesting. Like I said, I haven't used them. But no, I suppose they wanted to get some prime lenses that were cheap enough for people to afford them if they were struggling financially. So that's probably the reason why they would, say, release them. And they're very, very small if you wanted to, say, have light travel lenses and also put them on a gimbal. But I've said to you, and this is where, like I said to you, I tell the truth. Even though Tamron look after me, Australia, I'm still going to say that I wouldn't buy those Tamron lenses. I'd just buy the 17 to 28 and the 28 to 75. Because you're getting those same focal lengths inside there, and you're also getting the 2.8 aperture, but then you're getting multiple variations between there. I know they're a little bit more expensive, but I would probably save a little bit more and get one of those zoom lens over, say, getting one of those prime lenses. I was a little bit disappointed because they're not cheap here. They're around $600 in Australia, and I said to them, wow, that's expensive for what they are, 2.8 prime, sort of with that build quality and size. So I would prefer to get like the Tamron 28 to 75, which I adore, or the 17 to 28. Carl said, even Canon's digital SLRs are going for bargain prices. Yeah, well, I would expect that. If Canon pull out a real good camera, then Sony won't hold back anymore. Well, that's why I'm saying competition is good, isn't it? Because that's what we want to actually happen. Mark Frost, g'day Mark, where were we? Oops. Mark said, switching sounds so easy, but it's just too costly if you're lens invested. Yep. I was lucky when I went from Nikon. I didn't lose heaps, but now I would. But at the time, I didn't do too bad. Remember, you lose money in bodies, but lenses hold their value quite well. You will still lose money, but I didn't do too bad when I switched over. Woody said, was saving for the GM, the 24GM, but when my a7 III died, it cost me $600 for repairs. Oh, no, that's awful. Gerald said, no, Sony is a much bigger corporation than Canon. Yeah, I'm not talking about companies overall, Gerald. I'm just talking about the camera manufacturers when I mentioned that. I understand Sony is bigger if you look at, say, PlayStations and everything else, and TVs and all that sort of stuff. I was only talking about the Canon business, though. Longrider said, I've rented the A600 to test with the 100 to 400 and the 200 to 600 for birding. Tracking and battery are amazing. Yeah, great combo. I mean, great combo because you've got that reach in the APS-C cameras and great focusing. What else? We're going to move on in a second. Please do a review, David. What's that on? Guy with the camera, Jason Levine, Canon got the big guns. Peter McKinnon, Scott Kelby. If Canon gave me a check with the EOS R 28 to 70 f2, yeah, I'm not saying that you wouldn't take it, Photometer, but you'd have to be honest about it. And this is the thing that I'm saying to you, that people that are doing this and switching for monetary money need to be honest about it and say, I'm switching because Canon have paid me. That's the part that really gets me, because when you become a used car salesman, that's all they are, a lot of these people. When you become a used car salesman and you're not telling the truth, it's not ethically right. And I'm not going to sell my soul for anyone, and I don't care if there was money involved or not. If Canon gave me the gear I was just talking about a second ago, I would say, yep, Canon, I'm all in, but I'm going to tell people I'm switching due to the fact that you're paying me. and I'm moving over. I'm not going to switch over because I'm going to say Canon is a better system and all this sort of stuff, which is what goes on, and that's the part that I don't like. Long Rider says, I don't know if the images are better, but the colours are right out of the camera. Fantastic. Hi, Jim. How are you, mate? I'm just reading my first video after the switch. I was wrong about the EOS R. The EOS R is not a bad camera. I know a lot of people from Sony side of things really bag it, but there's some definite advantages with that camera, guys. Like the screen on the back is incredible. The menus are incredible. Straight out of camera, the results you get are really nice. I mean, I know the color, people talk about color theory and all this sort of stuff, and I think they're very, very close, very, very close. But if you're talking about straight out of camera, the Canon is amazing. I mean, autofocus now is really good on the Canon, but like I said, it's hit by a few things like, you know, the ridiculous crop. It's hit by one camera card slot. So there's certain things on that camera that would hold me back from moving over to it. Mark said, I got a killer deal on the 200-600 yesterday, so that's me until next year. That's fantastic, Mark. Simon said, Sony have definitely been resting on their laurels. They need to push to kickstart themselves. All right, let's keep going anyway. All right, so let's go to the next story. I noticed this was interesting because it's good on Sony. If you look at the DP review, there's a whole article there that talk about everything about this camera and stuff. Or there's lenses and stuff like that. But I know the a7R4 got Product of the Year. So that's a fantastic thing for Sony to get. And there's a whole article about all the different things that were there and were in these awards that you can read. And like I said, I'll put the links for all of this down below so you can have a look at. But fantastic for Sony that they did get this Product of the Year. And like I said, it's great if you're after a high-resolution camera with great focus, good build quality. The new design for Sony, it's fantastic. And by the way, they're saying the a7 IV is 1,000 off at Focus Camera if you're eligible for the EDU program. So if you can get that EDU program, you can get it for $1,000 off. But again, congratulations to Sony for that. Fantastic. Like I said, if you're a landscape photographer, if you're dealing with portraits in studio and stuff, there's no better camera that's out there. As long as you need the resolution, though. If you don't need the resolution, I would still go for the R3, which is 40 odd megapixels. But if you do want the resolution and you have a need for it, what a fantastic camera. Another thing from this too, which is saying there's zero interest from Sony to buy Olympus camera business know-how. This doesn't surprise me because, look, we keep hearing things about Olympus are going to go broke, Olympus aren't going to go broke. I mean, who knows? But I had this in the discussion last time when we went through, I was talking about this. I don't think Sony would be a good fit for this. And because that's the thing, I mean, I know Aaron has just gone back to Micro Four Thirds, but who really would want to go back to that technology? I mean, at least Panasonic have made full frame cameras now. Olympus are totally Micro Four Thirds, and I think this may come back to hurt them. It really may. So I don't know who would purchase Olympus if it went broke, because I couldn't see Panasonic doing. I don't think they would have the money, and they wouldn't need the technology because they've already got that technology there. So I'm not sure who would want to take over Olympus, and that's going to be one really interesting thing. I think if they had any brains, they would have changed their sensor, at least brought out an APS-C sensor or full frame sensor or even a medium format sensor. Bodies are fantastic, stabilization is fantastic, lenses are brilliant, but they're all limited to the Micro Four Thirds, so I'm not sure who would buy them. So it's an interesting scenario for them. I'm going to keep moving over anyway. Rumours from Sony are that there could be a new wide-angle GM early in the new year. This is really interesting because I said it's probably the main thing that Sony have been missing is a really good wide-angle AF lens. I mean, if you're looking at the thing down here, I'll vote actually because we'll see what people are saying. I would want the 14 or a 12. I'm just seeing what the results are. So according to the results, 36% have gone for the 18mm. 33, so it's close, has gone to 14. 16 to 35 GM is version 2. You're not going to get a version 2. I mean, we haven't had the 16 to 35 out long enough. And the 24 1.4 GM is 14. I'd want the 14mm out of any of those. But, you know, I'm hoping that Sony brings out, say, a wide-angle 12mm or something like that. That really would interest me. And it's something, like I said, that Sony has missed. It's really their major area that you're missing. I know you've got a wide-angle zoom, that 12 to whatever it is, I can't remember, but you haven't got a prime lens that's wide. The widest you've got sort of is like the 24 GM. So I really would love them to bring out a wide-angle GM lens. What would you love? And I'd love to know what you think. I'd love a 12mm or a 14mm would be fine by me. And if it's as good as the 24 GM, wow, that would be amazing. Another story too, this is interesting because it just shows what's going on with the camera technology coming up, that Sony has formed a new AI organization to develop new technology for cameras and more. And I've said this all along, that I think the future is AI. And it's really interesting that they've now set up a whole department based on AI. AI is what you're looking at with IAF. I think probably Kerry's trying to ring me. Just let me get this, guys, because I'll just see what she wants. Only be a second. Hello. Okay, I'll see you soon. I'm on a live chat anyway. All right, bye. Yeah, so this is what I said they use for AI and things like that. So it's all going to AI. Now, I think the future, let me just switch over to this camera. I think the future is going to be AI. It's going to have this thing like combining HDRs all in real time, and like what the Apple does, the iPhone. It's going to be all that sort of stuff. And I think also the future of AI is going to get rid of IBIS internally in the camera. Because if you look at, say, what things like, have I got it in here? Yeah. If you look at what they can do with, say, these Osmo action and things like that, the AI in these new cameras is unbelievable, and this is all done through digital stabilization. So as processors get more and more powerful, imagine what you're going to be able to do with stabilization. The stabilization, if you're dealing with not having to move the sensor and it can be all done internally, you know, if you start to get to, say, 6K, 8K sensors that can then use that sensor size to downsample and allow for that cropping for stabilization, you could just picture what they're going to be able to do in the future. And I think that probably is the future, some amazing stabilization and stuff like that. Having that multiple exposures and blended in real time back into it all. Getting better autofocus and things like that. They're all going to come. And that's all going to be AI, and it's great news that Sony have really starting to push this now, and they're setting up this second company for that, which is fantastic. So that's what's coming up in Sony recently. What else have we got? The last story is Panasonic. Let me just move this over. Last story is Panasonic exits the image sensor business. So I'm not surprised, really, in a way that I remember Tower Jazz and all this was going to be the next major thing and all this sort of stuff, you know, that sensors were going to be unbelievable. They were going to push Sony. Well, this is just proving how much the grip of Sony have in the sensor market. I think, was the SH1 a Sony sensor? I'm not sure. Was that a Tower Jazz sensor? Or it's not been confirmed yet, but they're selling it off anyway to some, it's going to a Taiwanese company for 250 million, I think they're saying. So it's basically going to be gone. Obviously, it's losing money. It's losing money badly, I believe. What are they saying here? Where they said they were talking about how much it's losing. I was just trying to see where it said. I think it was 100 odd million or something that it's lost. Oh, they lost 205. You can see here, it lost 205 million in the previous fiscal year. So it's not doing well at all. And it's not good. It's not good at all. Now this just shows how well Sony are running their sensor division, because Sony's sensor division is kicking goals, and this is going to be another push for Sony, I suppose. If you look at now that you're looking at Sony is selling sort of camera sensors to everyone. It's selling them to Fuji. It's selling them probably to Nikon. It's selling them to everyone out there. It's a global business, so this is unbelievable. I suppose it's sad that they're getting rid of it, Panasonic, but if it's not earning money, it's probably a sensible thing to do. But it's just going to be interesting to see what sensors they use in the SH1, and I'm not sure what they do use, whether it is a Sony sensor or whether it's a Tower Jazz sensor. But I just thought I'd mention that. So there you go. So let me just come back onto Q&A just quickly before we finish for the day. Victor said, I think Samsung would be a good fit for to buy Olympus camera division. Maybe. Where were we going back? Gerald said, the a7R4 deserved it. It's a fantastic camera. Yeah, I know you're really happy with yours, Gerald, understandably. I'm happy I upgraded from the excellent a7R3. David, you can try mine in February. What else have we got? Olympus days are numbered. Yeah, I hope not, Carl, but it may be. They do make great cameras, but I just don't think they're selling. That's the problem. If Sony make a 12 or 14 millimeter 1.4 like the 24 GM, I would sell a kidney to buy it. I know, wouldn't it be amazing if it's the same as that? It would be brilliant. Long Rider said, I would love for Sony to put the APS-C sensor in an a7 III body for sports and wildlife. That's what I thought they were going to do with the a6-700. Just never happened. Any news on the 7200Z lens from Nikon? No. Gerald said, I want the 12mm Sony GM to go with my 24. Yeah, that would be amazing, Gerald. Sydney Image said, I'm after some advice. I'm wanting a mirrorless full frame as tired of waiting for Fujifilm to upgrade the sensor, and I'm not buying their GFX. Uses are sports, landscapes, portraits, and functions. If you're dealing with all of those uses, Sydney, I would probably go for an a7 III because you're dealing there with portraits, also functions, and sports. So I'd probably go for something like that. If you could afford an A9, that would be amazing. If you do more landscape, it depends what you shoot most of. If you shoot more landscapes, you may be better to go for an a7 III, a7R3 or an a7R4. If you're shooting general type work, everything all up, you're probably better to go with an a7 III or an A9. That's what I believe anyway. Sony needs to form an elite hardware division to solve some problems with their mirrorless. A 16mm prime GM might be good. Astro. Woody said 12mm GM, 24 GM and 55 1.8 and I'm set. Joe said the a7R4 is the best APS-C camera. Yeah, it is. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, that it's 26 megapixels I think you get out of that sensor. So it is the highest resolution APS-C camera available. And a lot of people don't understand how good the a7R4 is if you want to use it as a cropped sensor. James said David was quick, got off the phone fast. No, she only just said she's on her way home. She's working today. Jim said next doorbell will be a doorbell package delivery of more lighting. I don't think so, Jim. It's Saturday. No lighting coming today. Bill said, I like the 14mm. I have the 14mm Samyang for astrophotography. Photomix says, AI sounds great for making our cameras even better, but it's going to eat our batteries alive. Yeah, they'll have to come up with something. You got to have a specific battery just to use the Rocksteady on the GoPro. James said 215 million. Oh, is that for what they'd lost? Bad enough we got EVFs and you got battery power now. I love it. Jim said Sony has about 70% of the auto sensor market. Yeah, Sony sensors are killing it. They are an amazing. They do better work than anyone. They certainly are unbelievable. Fantastic. What a great thing to have too. Mick said it's probably is time to review the APS Sigma 16 1.4. Yeah, I agree with you, Mick, and I might do that soon as well. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for joining in. I know I'm a little bit later than what I normally am. I'll be back to the normal time next week on the Friday Australian time, Thursday US time. Apart from that, everyone, have a great weekend. Don't buy too much with Black Friday deals. And thank you so much for joining in today. I really appreciate it. And apart from that, everyone, I'll see you all soon for the next video. Bye for now, guys. I can go fade to black. Watch. Ooh.